Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.
My name is Jenny. I actually am a NICU nurse. I am a mother of 3 kids, happily married. I have a 9-year-old son, Johnny, who's my T1D, an 11-year-old daughter, and a almost 14-year-old son.
Please don't forget that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Are you an adult living with type 1 or the caregiver of someone who is, and a U.S. resident? If you are, I'd love it if you would go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and take the survey. When you complete that survey, your answers are used to move type 1 diabetes research of all kinds. So if you'd like to help with type 1 research, but don't have time to go to a doctor or an investigation, and you want to do something right there from your sofa, this is the way. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. It should not take you more than about 10 minutes. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year supply of vitamin D. drinkag1.com/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Cozy Earth. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout at CozyEarth.com and you will save 40% off of your entire order. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes and their MiniMed 780G system, designed to help ease the burden of diabetes management. Imagine fewer worries about missed boluses or miscalculated carbs, thanks to meal detection technology and automatic correction doses. Learn more and get started today at medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox.
My name is Jenny. I actually am a NICU nurse. I work night shift. I am a mother of 3 kids, happily married. I have a 9-year-old son, Johnny, who's my diabetes, my T1D, an 11-year-old daughter, and a almost 14-year-old son, Anthony.
14, 11, and 9, your youngest has type 1.
My youngest, yep.
Okay, and that's your son.
Yep.
Or a
boy,
son.
girl, boy. Yep.
Boy, girl, boy. And you have something going on too, or no?
No.
No.
For me, no. But Johnny's had a very extensive prior history before diabetes.
Okay, we'll get into it then.
Which will be part of all of this, yeah.
So let me just ask you like some foundational questions. Do you or your husband or people in your family have other autoimmune issues?
The only thing I know is that my mother-in-law has rheumatoid arthritis and her mom had lupus.
Lupus and RA. Okay.
Yeah. So, and then my dad's side of the family, I didn't grow up with my dad. I did reach out to my half sister about diabetes, and she didn't know anything about it. But I don't know if there's other type 1 other autoimmune on that side.
Okay, but you don't have celiac or hypothyroidism or anything like that.
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
And your other 2 kids, any issues?
No, I had them both tested after he was diagnosed, and they were both negative.
Okay. When does the diabetes come up? He's 9 now. How old was he when he was diagnosed?
Just after his 8th birthday, about a month out, a little less than a month after his 8th birthday.
This has only really been a year or so?
A year and a half, yeah.
Okay. Do his other issues come prior to that?
Yes. When he was 23 months old, he was diagnosed with leukemia.
Okay.
So that was a couple of years of intense therapy. He had relapsed twice. So he actually had 2 bone marrow transplants, or AKA another stem cell transplants. The first transplant, he ended up relapsing about 8 months later. That transplant actually gave him a lot of side effects called graft versus host disease, where the donor is attacking your body. So he broke out like in a rash. He had a lot of GI issues. We actually had ulcers in his stomach. And he also had some changes in his lungs. So they were calling it lung GVHD also.
How do you, you know what? I have a lot of questions already, but I'm going to go back to the beginning first. You've got 2 kids. Your life's chugging along fine. You have a newborn less than 2 years old. How do you notice he's sick? Like, what are the first things that come up?
It was around Christmas time of 2016, he just started to, act sick, right? He had a cough and whatnot. He wasn't in school yet, but my other kids were in school, I thought he ended up having like the flu. One day he was kind of limping He had some bruises on him, but I didn't think it was anything abnormal for like a 2-year-old kid who's active, right?
Yeah.
I took him in to see the doctor and she looked at his legs and she's like, well, I don't think there's anything going on. I don't think we need an x-ray, but she looked in his ears. Oh, he has an ear, looks like he has an ear infection. So I was like, oh, okay. Maybe that explains his wobbliness. Maybe there's some dizziness. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Came home with some antibiotics. And after several nights of that, he would spike fevers at night. And then, of course, he had all the respiratory symptoms of having a cold or a flu. So I thought, well, maybe he has the flu. It's a really bad flu. A couple of days in antibiotics and nothing. I didn't see any changes. He would still spike fevers. And one day we were giving him a bath and I saw along his spine, he had some bumps, right? And I thought, oh my gosh. I had made a comment to my husband that the bruises kind of make me think of like leukemia, right? And he got really upset at me. Like, don't say that, I didn't even know that I guess my nursing background, but it wasn't like in my forefront. But anyways, whatever, we put the kids to bed that night. I laid down on the couch, on my iPad, I looked up like, how does leukemia present in children? And a lot of it was, limping or bone pain. So kids go in for x-rays. And then I was like, oh my gosh, but the kids were already in bed. I was still in denial. I said, you know what? One more day of antibiotics. Let's get through the night.
Yeah. Why don't I get one more good night's sleep for the rest of my life? Yeah.
Well, pretty much, right? So, but then of course he spiked with a fever in the middle of the night again. So I called and made an appointment for first thing in the morning, took him into the doctor and she said, I think you should just go to the ER and get all your answers. My husband was with me with my 18, he was 2, my 3.5-year-old. I said, well, let's go home first, drop Savina off with your dad, mom. And let's pack a bag, because I knew I was like,
this is what was happening.
This is what was happening. And they were wanting to send us to a different hospital. And I said, no, we're going to go to this other hospital, which is the one I work at because that has the stronger pediatric floor.
Mm-hmm. You were a NICU nurse at that point. How long have you been doing it for?
Since 2001. So 23 years.
How did you not burn out? Doesn't that happen to a lot of people?
You know what? I work night shift and night shift is quieter. And I'm only part-time. I'm fully benefited part-time. So I only do 2 12s a week and I get benefits. So that's how I don't get burned out.
Okay. Oh, I was going to say.
I'm burned out now, but not from work.
Not from that, just from everything else.
Work is my break. So my social hour, I guess. Actually, it's my Juicebox Podcast time.
Jenny, listen, first of all, I don't think people should be listening to a podcast to work, but I realize you do, and it's okay with me.
It's NICU. It's the baby sleep. I have downtime.
I just have to say that like a person talking about their home life and then going, I go to work in a NICU for relaxation.
Yeah. Well, especially during the pandemic. I mean, I had 3 kids at home and I'm like, get me to work. I want to stay up all night. I can have a break.
I'll see you guys later.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. All right. No. So, okay. Wow. So your background tells you enough, the bruising, the limping, you figure it out, you get him to the hospital. And has your husband, is he more on board at that point? Or do you think he finds out in the hospital? Today's episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes, who is making life with diabetes easier with the MiniMed 780G system. The MiniMed 780G automated insulin delivery system anticipates, adjusts, and corrects every 5 minutes. Real-world results show people achieving up to 80% time in range with recommended settings without increasing lows. But of course, individual results may vary. The 780G works around the clock so you can focus on what matters. Have you heard about Medtronic's extended infusion set? It's the first and only infusion set labeled for up to a 7-day wear. This feature is repeatedly asked for, and Medtronic has delivered. 97% of people using the 780G reported that they could manage their diabetes without major disruptions of sleep. They felt more free to eat what they wanted, and they felt less stress with fewer alarms and alerts. You can't beat that. Learn more about how you can spend less time and effort managing your diabetes by visiting medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox. When I tell you about Cozy Earth, I'm usually talking about the discount. Use Juicebox at checkout to save 40%. I don't think I take enough time to tell you about the quality of their products. Superior softness, an enhanced fabric that is durable and won't pill. It's guaranteed for 10 years. Temperature regulation, The Cozy Earth sheets that I have are incredibly breathable. You're going to sleep several degrees cooler than normal. These products are made responsibly, they're durable, and there is a commitment to quality. So much so that you will get a 100-night sleep trial on the sheets and a 10-year warranty. Why don't you let Cozy Earth create a sanctuary within your home? That's your time. You want to be comfortable sitting in those sheets or lounging in your joggers. Maybe you've just returned from the gym or completed a hard day of work. Jump into the shower, and the next thing you know, you're drying yourself off. You feel like a princess. That's how I feel. I feel like a princess when I dry myself off with those towels. I really do. Same as when I get into the bed and when I put on these great clothes. CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. You will save 40% off of the bamboo sheets, the bath sheets, or whatever else you decide to buy at CozyEarth.com.
Yeah, I think he really finds out in the hospital.
Okay.
I didn't push it too much in letting him, like, this is leukemia while we're sitting there, because we were there in the morning and we didn't find out till 4 in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. Just because his dad was diagnosed with colon cancer, about a year and a half before that. So I didn't want to, stress him out anymore.
Did his father pass?
He did. He passed in 2019.
Yeah. So
August. Yeah.
This is
after he died. Yeah, it was after, but
after your son was diagnosed.
Yeah, exactly.
I see. Okay. Gosh, what's the treatment for leukemia? I mean, you said
yeah.
But walk me through it a little bit. What'd they do the first time?
Well, obviously we were admitted. He had to get a central line placed in his chest, right? So that entails like sterile dressing changes, etc. And that's so that I could draw labs and take labs in frequently, and they can get blood infusions and all that stuff. But it's chemotherapy. You're basically trying to hit the bone marrow hard, because leukemia is a blood cancer and your blood is made from your bone marrow, your stem cells in your bone marrow. So you're trying to constantly hit it hard because you want to kill all those cells. So you have a cycle of that. You hit it hard and then you wait, a couple of weeks or a month, all your numbers go down. So you're immunocompromised, and then they start to come back up, and then you hit it again. You're just constantly doing that.
Okay. Jeez. My mom had, cancer. And so we got to see her go through some treatments, but how is it different for it's gotta be different for a child, right?
I mean, yeah, definitely. He's 2 years old, and one of the treatments was for him like an oral steroid that's really disgusting, right? Mm-hmm. And here my kid's sickly in this hospital. We're trying to shove this nasty stuff in his mouth, and he's like not having it. So as a NICU nurse, I was like, give me an NG tube. They looked at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, no, I'm not afraid of an NG tube. He's already sick. I'm going to be giving him all these meds. And it's torture. Like, I'd rather have the tube and less stress on him, Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of medications, and days he felt good, days he didn't. I'd have to draw labs and drop it off at the nearest lab. Sometimes we'd have to go in for blood products. Some of the medications would make him really sick. Sometimes we had to be inpatient for the medications because some of them were IV, or if he had a fever, we'd be in the hospital. Yeah.
Did you place the tube yourself, or did you let them do it?
Both.
Oh, jeez.
So he would because he's only 2, they would sedate him to do all of this bone. He also, leukemia is found in his spinal fluid. So that meant that he would have to get spinal taps where they would take samples. They would, basically they would sedate him about once a month to take samples of his bone marrow, also to do a spinal tap and inject 3 different kind of medications to attack the leukemia. So I took advantage of those every time to put the tube in.
Yeah.
But there were times at home he threw it up. Oh. And at first, a couple of times, if we had a clinic appointment, then I would just let them put it back in. Sometimes we'd try to go out without, but there was a couple of times where me and my husband did it ourselves.
What was the early prognosis?
It was not very good for him because he had there's all these different cytogenetics of the leukemia, and his MLL rearrangement is complicated to explain, but basically there was no data on his, but it was similar to like an infant leukemia, and infant leukemia's got a poor prognosis. I mean, I did deep dives into all the studies on studies and treatment. And the way I had to get through it was like, you know what? All of this data I'm looking at is from years ago, right? And then I know they're constantly targeting treatment to be safer and safer and safer. So I try not to focus on that. But it was like probably, I would say less than 40% that he would make it to 5 years.
Wow. Gosh. And then there's a reoccurrence pretty soon after. Like, so when did they proclaim him? How do they talk about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you kind of like by the second or third end of the second or third month, you want to be at a certain level. And if you get to that, then it's like, okay, your chances are okay. Right. So we continued with the treatment, but then about 7 months into it, he relapsed.
Meaning those numbers rose again?
Meaning they found some abnormal cells in his spinal fluid.
Okay.
That basically were like, okay, he has to have a transplant now. Or the CAR T cells is another thing, right? Now they can modify your own T cell, like collect your T cells, modify them so that they can see the leukemia within you, attack your B cells because it's B cell leukemia. But he didn't qualify for that yet as a first line of treatment after relapse. So we had to go through this in more intense treatment, a lot of it in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the first month of that, his numbers rose again. And then they said, okay, well, that's kind of like a failure to our reinduction. So now he qualifies for T cells.
I see.
But we're going to do the T cells, but not, some people now do T cells and it'll maybe cure them or prolong, they don't have to have any more treatment for a long time as long as they have the T cells. But they were like, for him, we really think we still have to do a transplant. We use it as a bridge to get him in deep remission where we like close to zero as possible of no cells because that's your best chance of cure when you have a transplant.
I see. Now, and the transplant is the thing that ends up attacking him. Is that right?
Yeah. So we didn't have any good donors for him because we all got tested. Like we were the most 7 out of 12 match, in the registry, there was no good matches. They found a 4 out of 6 match of cord blood that they decided to use. They were deciding between one of us as a half match, family match, which they can like manipulate the cells to not attack you as much, but they decided to go with the cord the first time.
Okay.
So we did that. And, because his spinal fluid was, where he was relapsing, we were getting our transplant at UCSF and they really did not want to do radiation on him because he's only 3, like cranial radiation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our doctor was saying, yes, his best chance of cure is radiation. You got to do it, So we had to struggle to make that decision. Our transplant, who were the one, UCSF telling us not to do it. And then our own doctor saying, no, you should. But he's only 3. So we decided, a lot of these kids relapse again. So let's kick the bucket on the cranial radiation and not do it this round because he's so young.
Mm-hmm.
If he relapses again, then fine, we'll do it the second time because we don't have a choice, right? But we'll buy him brain development time,
Right. Can I talk to you for a minute about that?
Yeah.
2 doctors say 2 different things. It's on you. I mean, you're a NICU nurse, but
tough.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like, what's your husband do for a living?
He's an insurance broker.
So he's not a cancer doctor then. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
So now you're sitting there, to me, it feels like somebody,
it's agonizing.
Oh my God. Like somebody gives you money and then tells you have to bet it up or down on a football game. And you don't know anything about the game or the teams. Yeah. You just have to pick a side, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think what ultimately made us, like I said, is you want the best chance of life for your child. So you look at that. Like if we were selfish, we don't want to do this again, then fine, let's just do it now. But ultimately we're like, well, if he comes out of this alive, we want his body the most intact and without damage. So we can't do because there are a lot of kids that relapse again.
Yeah.
Like let's kick the bucket on the radiation.
Yeah. Just push it off if you can.
Push it off as long as we can. Let's not mess with his brain. We're already messing with his brain because he's getting a lot of chemotherapy injected right into his spinal fluid.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already damaging it.
And it feels like you're doing it. Is that right? Like when you make the decision, does it feel, or is that a? No,
we just kind of made a decision and,
you're good. You were healthy enough not to live in that forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You just got to move on.
All right. Good.
And it all worked out.
No, that's awesome. I mean, geez.
So he relapsed again.
Yeah, it all worked out right after another relapse, Scott.
Well, so this is why I say it worked out because that first year after transplant was horrendous. He was having a lot of GI issues, basically cramping and mucousy stools. He'd wake me up at night, just not feeling good, losing weight. I'm basically tube feeding him. He has no appetite. And then he breaks out in this rash over his whole body.
Yeah.
Right. He's itchy to the point where he's like scratching in the middle of the night, scratching his dressing off, that kind of stuff. I'd have to change his dressing in the middle of the night. Like, it was horrible. So when he relapsed, it was like, all right, we have to do another transplant. For sure, yes, we're doing radiation. His doctor decided, because he had lung changes with the first one, well, we're not going to radiate his lungs. We're not going to do the total body. We're just going to do cranial radiation. So that kind of made me feel good, because we'll hit the rest of the body hard with leukemia, the brain with just the cranial radiation.
Yeah.
And hope we get it all, right? But not have the total body radiation also has a lot more side effects later on, or late effects, right? So we kind of avoided that, but we were able to start him on a little bit of steroids to calm this other inflammation and get his rash under control, because before he went into his second transplant was when he was basically a week after his 4th birthday. So a year later, less than a year later.
Hey, do your other kids know you're alive during all this? Like, how do you?
Oh gosh, you know what? We're lucky. My in-laws live just around the corner here, and so they just were in charge of the other two, basically. I mean, me and my husband tag team, basically, right? But when it came to school, they would pick them up. They would make dinners all the time, or we would tag team.
Do you feel like you missed something?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I missed a lot I was volunteering. My oldest was in kindergarten when he was diagnosed. So I was doing a lot of volunteering in his class. He's in Spanish immersion. So I wasn't able to help him with any of that. I wasn't able to help him with Spanish, and I didn't have the bandwidth, I came home. It was spend time with them, but all right, hurry up, get to bed, because I need downtime. Can
I ask what your youngest, what was his quality of life like for those 2 years? Is he just a patient, or is he living as well?
No, I think he was living. No, not just a patient. There was days in the hospital. Yeah, there was some days that were tough, but in the hospital, on the days where he's feeling fine and we're there just because he had a fever, he's got to get antibiotics. Like, the siblings could come visit. The hospital has cars they could drive around. This is all pre-COVID, thank God. I can't imagine the ones that had to deal with it after COVID. But when he come home, he has a brother and sister to play with,
Right.
So he was living. We made it fun. Everything, a lot of times after, if he had a tough procedure, it's like we go to the store and buy something. I always try to make things positive for him. If he had to go get poked for something or this or that, well, let's go to the store and get a treat. So it was something he looked forward,
Yeah.
He forgot about what he had to go through and was excited about he got a lot of stuff, Or
we were just talking the other night. I'm sorry, I'll cut you off for a second. We were just talking the other night. For a couple of years, we had this obnoxious blow up ghost in our front yard at Halloween. Mm-hmm. And when I say obnoxious, it was like 30 feet tall. It was like taller than the house, Mm-hmm. And the other night, Arden goes, "Why?" Like, because listen, I'm not throwing shit on anybody, but like inflatable light up things in our front yard's not really our vibe.
Yeah.
So now as an adult, like just recently, Arden said, she's like, "I loved it when I was growing up." And I was like, okay. She goes, "But why did we have it?" She's like, "It's not a thing you and mom would buy." And I said, "You don't remember?" And she said, "No. After one of your endo appointments, you get this really great A1C and you were super happy." And I said, "Oh, we should celebrate. What do you want? You can have anything you want." And she went out and bought this giant inflatable ghost for the front yard, but she didn't remember that that's what it was from.
Oh, that's cute.
It's really interesting. But listen, I'm with you. I would have been like, "Hey, bad day.
Whatever.
Here's a toy."
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, he left to buy those little cars that you see at like, CVS or whatever, just
right.
$10 car, made him happy,
Yeah.
Whatever's going to make him happy. I mean, I'm all for it because he's the one going through the tough stuff,
Of course. Now, looking back, does he have much recollection of all of that?
Yeah, I mean, he remembers, so we had two long inpatient stays at UCSF because he had the transplants basically, and he was just stuck in the room. You can't leave at all. Mm-hmm. So he remembers the days when his immune system was strong enough that his siblings could come and they would play. At UCSF, they have a really, really nice gift shop. He always called it the grocery stop. So we always went to the grocery stop. And he remembers that. Yeah, he does.
What do you think as a family? Are you closer because of this, or did it cause problems, or how do you think of it?
No, I think we are. I think because of it, any chance that we could, my husband was always like, he's the fun planner, right? Whatever we can do once a quarter, we're going somewhere, whether a drive. I live in California, so up or down the coast and stay in a hotel. The kids love that. Mm-hmm. So I would say closer. And then, when the pandemic hit, it didn't freak us out one bit. I mean, we were already used to the masking.
Well, I mean, cancer gives you a different perspective, right? Like
we didn't. We were like we were traveling. We were like, are you sure you want to travel right now? We're like, yeah. I mean, we go stay in the hotels, and the hotels are like empty. My kids know, like, don't touch the elevator button, use your elbow, or don't touch the handrail, hold my hand.
Listen, I always tell people, like, I think type 1 diabetes, having a child diagnosed at 2, by the way, your story is the closest I've come to like outright crying while I'm recording the podcast.
Yeah.
Because it's hard not to sit and picture your own kids as 2-year-olds, during while you're talking.
It's terrible.
Yeah. It's not great. But Arden was diagnosed at 2. And mm-hmm. I think now, 18 years later, my perspective is that of a person twice my age. Mm-hmm. If I ever get forced to list the good thing, some people are like, does anything good come from diabetes? Mm-hmm. I do feel like I've got, like, you know what I mean? Like when people get upset about things, I look around and I'm like, I don't know what everybody's so upset about.
Well, because you've been through a lot of stress. You're,
right.
You learn to just roll with the punches.
Oh, Jenny, if the zombies ever come over the hill, I'm just going to go, I was waiting for this.
Yeah.
But cancer's another thing. It's listen, I don't judge people's, struggles one mm-hmm. against the other. I'm not mm-hmm. scoring it, but
mm-hmm.
Nobody told me Arden had a 40% chance of living when she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, So, and that's not a thing I had to like,
Well, having the diagnosis of diabetes really makes, you're already worried. He's already got higher risk of stroke, heart attack, even just secondary cancers because of all the treatment he's had. And so now to have diabetes, it's like, I haven't been able to get his A1C under 6.5. So I'm trying, but it's a struggle working on it.
That's pretty good, Jenny. Don't worry.
Well, I know, but when I hear what everybody else can do, I'm that's what I want,
No, of course. Well, how's variability for him though? Are the highs and lows pretty even, or are you bouncing up and down?
Like low 200s is the high, but more 180s. But if we're going to jump into diabetes, we did the Omnipod 5. So we did MDI for 3 months, and we did the Omnipod 5. And I just wanted a little bit more control. So I kept reading about the Mobi and having just more control for the basal rates, because we would have feet on the floor pretty decent. And I hate having to constantly like bug him at school to give boluses.
Yeah.
So now we're trialing the Mobi.
And that runs the Control IQ algorithm, right?
Yes, the Control IQ. So I can turn up his basal in the morning so that we don't have as high of a
okay. Well, that's awesome.
Kind of fight. I'm still learning to work with the system. We're like about a month into it now.
Yeah.
And dealing with the tubing and all that stuff. But he just rolls with it. He's like, you want to, look, he likes to show people his devices. He's so used to being poked and prodded that, when we were diagnosed actually with diabetes and we had to go inpatient, well, to back up, the way we found it is because we were following up with some renal labs from his renal doctor, and his sodium was a little low. So she's like, give him some sodium supplements. Let's retest in a week. And she also ordered a urine analysis. And that's where we saw he was spilling glucose. Mm-hmm. So then she ordered a glucometer. And then like 2 days later, we find out he's type 1 diabetic. So he was never in DKA or anything. His A1C at that point was 6.8.
Yeah. Is there any argument to be made? Does the leukemia or the treatments for it, could that help with the diagnosis? You know what I mean? Push towards a diabetes diagnosis?
It's not a typical thing that happens with kids that have. There's also not like as many long-term survivors of 2 transplants, right? Mm-hmm. So when I asked his transplant doctor, the only thing she could come up with is like, well, we've taxed the immune system so much. It could just be that. Or is it that we have autoimmune in the family? I don't know.
Or a little of both, or who knows, right?
So the Christmas party at school of December 2022, mm-hmm. He was wearing his mask to school while everybody was like not, right? But then they had the Christmas party, they have food, so he took his mask off to eat. And then Christmas Day, he had a fever. And I know there was another student in his class who also had a fever. So that's why I think maybe he caught something then. But because he was still technically immunocompromised, I had to take him to the ER because then they have to do a blood culture, give him antibiotics, and then they did a respiratory panel. So it came back that he had influenza A.
Okay.
And then 2 months later, or beginning of March, he got type 1. So I'm wondering if that was the trigger. I don't know.
Well, I just checked I asked ChatGPT. By the way, as I asked it, I thought, if I ever do anything really crazy, you know how the cops come collect your computer when you're like a really like a bad guy? I think they're going to look at my computer and be like, what the hell was this guy doing? Yeah.
What's in this guy's head?
I asked, can childhood leukemia or its treatments force a type 1 diabetes diagnosis? It said it could. Immune system disruption, steroid use, and pancreatic damage are all possibilities. So, yeah, geez.
So we also found out he does have Hashimoto's, right?
Oh, okay.
I can't remember if I knew that before the type 1 or not. I don't remember. I didn't want to feel like going back. His lab history is long.
Jenny, no one wants your life, by the way. You're like, I can't remember when Hashimoto's came.
Yeah. So, but for the longest time, we've been following up with his TSH, and, it vacillate between 2 and 10. And they're like, well, he's not symptomatic, blah, blah. But after listening to your podcast and stuff, I'm like, you know what? This kid's got so much stacked against him. I want to lift him up any way I can.
Yeah.
In April, I'm like, we want to start thyroid meds. Well, and I think at that time he had some that were under 2. And I was like, well, I don't care. She's like, but it's a daily medication. You know what? We take daily medications. He's got high blood pressure. Like, he's on insulin now. It's not a big deal for me to give him a tiny pill.
Yeah.
I'd rather give him what he needs to not have any variables out there. You got too much variables I got to worry about in life.
Your son might be the only 9-year-old who would find being in the mob relaxing. He'd be like, I can't believe the doctor's like, oh, it's a daily medication. Like, oh, you think that's our problem?
Yeah. And so, recently we've also, because he had cranial radiation, he's smaller for his size, right? And all the steroid use because of that's part of treatment for leukemia. We actually held him back kindergarten, so he's a year behind his age. And he's one of the smaller kids in class. So we just started growth hormones a month ago, beginning of September. So, we're giving him thyroid, growth hormone, and now insulin.
How long do you think the growth hormone takes to kick in? What did they tell you?
Well, we start off on a low dose. He'll get labs drawn next month, and then she'll go up. So, it should start working, but as she ramps it up, he'll grow more.
And is this a thing?
And he'll have it through puberty.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a thing that you're expecting to do over years.
Yeah. And she even said that for some kids, when they're older, when they stop it, they don't feel good. So some people keep it going their whole life.
Oh, you need a little bit of it to keep you feeling regular almost. Okay, that's interesting. Did they tell you why?
Well, he had cranial radiation. So I think that, we did the MRI of his pituitary gland before starting, and that looks fine. But because we did 10 days of cranial radiation of 2 gray, so 10 days of we sedate him. He'd go into this tube or whatever, and they give him radiation. We did 10 days of that. So I think that because of that, it causes growth hormone deficiency.
I see. But once you get to your level and they said you might need some just to feel normal, do you know why that is?
Because they're deficient. Even adults, when you go to sleep, you make growth hormone, right?
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. So he wouldn't be making as much, so he wouldn't.
Well, yeah, he makes it, but this is supplementing what he's not making enough of.
I understand. Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, did you cry? Do you still cry? Or how long did you cry? When did you stop crying? Did you worry about yourself when you stopped crying? Were you
it's really crazy because I feel like if we didn't have diabetes, wow, our life would be so good. We feel like we already went through it. We went through the gauntlet. And for everything he went through, we've replacing these hormones, not counting diabetes. He's got high blood pressure, so he takes 2 meds for that. He's got some learning issues because of cranial radiation and all that. He's just a little bit slower, and so he just needs more help.
Right.
But other than that, he's just a normal 9-year-old kid, and life is chomping along. We've had some friends that passed away from leukemia. We have a friend who's still battling a lot of pain issues that they can't figure out. That's debilitating. And I feel like he got through so much so easily.
Oh, you sound grateful.
Diabetes. I'm grateful. I am grateful. I'm grateful that he's alive. I mean, I look at him every day because honestly, I had one of my manager's sons at the time when all this was happening. Her son was exactly a year younger than him, and they had the birthday the same week. And he relapsed, but he never, he passed. So to see that, the same time we were going through our second transplant, he's going through his first kind of thing, and to see them go through what we went through and what happened, it's like I'm grateful. Yeah. Because, to think about not having him, what that would mean for our family would just be...
It would just change everybody in a way.
Oh, change everybody. So, yeah, we got the diabetes. And honestly, it sucks. But
that felt like a smack in the face, right?
It keeps me... Oh, it is a smack in the face. Yeah. It's like, what the heck? I mean, if we didn't have this, life would be good.
Yeah, like it only took us 7 years to get through this leukemia thing, and then boom, here this is. Yeah, I would have listened. I got to tell you, I had that feeling when Arden's thyroid was diagnosed.
Yeah. What next?
You're like, well, diabetes wasn't enough. Like, you know what I mean? Like we'll do another one here, and that slap in the face it really does. Like, there's no one to blame for it. I guess some people might blame God or whatnot. Like, I'm not in that camp, so
I'm not in that camp either.
Yeah, so I'm just like, oh God, this keeps happening, and she's like,
I mean, I don't know. I just feel like somehow this is his journey. This is his soul's journey that we got to just roll with it,
Yeah. Did you mark yourself as a resilient person prior to this, or is this something you taught yourself?
No, I think, my mom taught me to be this way. She went through, a lot being a single parent. Mm-hmm. I saw her struggle a lot as a single parent raising us, me and my brother. So, but I watched a lot of Oprah growing up, so.
You're like, I just found people who had it worse than me, Scott. It makes it all better.
Yeah, well, it really does. It really does.
People, over and over again, that's brought up in the podcast, and everyone always feels like they're apologetic when they're saying it out loud. You know what I mean? Yeah. But finding some perspective.
It is perspective. And you know what? I always try, I'm a glass half full kind of person, even though I'm don't get me wrong, there's days of diabetes. The glass is empty. I'm just like rare in the midst of the day-to-day, but stepping back.
You're not saying, I don't know what you're saying exactly. But I don't like measuring things against things. Like, I think that the worst thing that's happened to you qualifies as the worst thing that's happened to you. But
yeah. Are
you saying that diabetes gives childhood leukemia, a run for its money?
I think it's just because I'm so far removed from all that, right?
It's in the past.
This is a 24-hour a day thing that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
I don't have that break anymore. I don't even think, actually, I guess this is a good thing, is it does keep me from thinking about that, because I don't think about relapse. I mean, I'm grateful that we caught it early, because had we caught it and he was in DKA, I would have been thinking relapse. I would have been a mess.
It's interesting. Are you saying I climbed out of one pool of shit and now I'm in a different pool of shit, but it stops me from thinking about the first pool?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's awesome.
It does. And if he ever does start to get ill and whatnot, I think my brain is going to think diabetes and not.
Yeah, not before.
I want to step back and give kudos to my son, my oldest son. So the second transplant, like I said, we didn't have a good unmatched donor out there. So they decided to do a family member, and they picked my older son.
Oh, wow. So he did a bone marrow donation.
Yeah, he did a bone marrow. For that meant he had to get a central line, had to sedate him for that. And then he was connected to this apheresis machine that kind of spun his blood through it and collected his cells, gave back his red blood cells back to him. So he got to spend 2 nights in the hospital, and he loved it, because it's like, oh, I get attention now, He's living like a king. Yeah. Grandpa bringing him Legos. So yeah, so technically now Johnny is his chimera brother, right? He's genetically, Johnny has Anthony's blood. So if Johnny commits a murder or something leaves blood footprint, Anthony could be blamed for it.
Do they tease each other about that? Like, I'm going to commit a crime and
not yet. I think maybe when they're older, they,
frame you for it.
He just said, yeah, yeah, not yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if when he's older, he says that.
Jenny, wow, you have a genuinely good way about you for having been through so much. I'm sorry to ask you, did this have positive or negative impacts on your marriage?
I think positive. I mean, I think the way me and my husband got through this is like we give each other space to deal with it our own ways without like nagging each other, divide and conquer. I think in some sense, he probably, especially now with diabetes, would probably say that because we don't have as much time, or I'm so focused on the diabetes because it really is more my thing. Like he does, I've tried to have him listen to the podcast. He hasn't yet. He doesn't want diabetes and it being the number one thing. And I'm like, it just is. It just,
you can't ignore it away. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, exactly. Until I feel like the more work, and I'm trying to get him to help and understand it more, or at least understand the algorithms and the pumping so that we together can make better decisions. Because it's easier, because his brain, I think, is better than mine for this kind of stuff. But
really?
I think so.
Is he better with numbers or?
I think he's just a good critical thinker. And like I said, I work night shift. I'm a zombie mom a lot of times.
Okay.
So I just think, having his help would be, I'm trying to get him there. We're working on it.
Yeah. Well, he's a boy, so it'll probably take him till he's 53, but that's how old I am. Yeah. I'm starting to feel like an adult now.
We're working on it. But like I say, because, he's lost his father, he's definitely a family man, and that's what attracted to him, to see how he is with his parents and the way his parents are with each other. My kids have, as much as the stuff that we've been through, we go on vacations a lot. These kids have been to Disneyland almost every year. We just do fun things because we know that this is the time that we have with them. The older they get, the less time we're going to have with them, and not knowing what was going to happen with Johnny, but making memories is the most important thing. And so I think in that sense, I think it's brought us closer. And I'm hoping that also my older two see the struggle that I go through every day with Johnny, that, they got to behave. They got to do good in school. They got to figure out their way, and not be rebellious teenagers and all that stuff. Because I don't have tolerance for that.
You're like, listen, if any of this happens, I'm driving us all off a bridge, just so you know.
Yeah. I know.
But do you think that they feel ignored?
No.
Okay.
Not at all. I mean, there may have been times during the tough treatments and stuff, for sure, I think. Because my daughter's 18 months older than Johnny, so I'm sure there were.
Yeah, she was.
But little. I don't think they feel ignored because we still do, we don't sit down at dinner table every day, but at least probably twice a week. And we're always doing fun things as a family. And
Jenny, I have to ask you though, like, you're doing fun things as a family, like you're trying to bring your husband along with diabetes. Do you do something for yourself? Like, do you, I don't know, shoplift for the thrill? Like, what do you do? Like, what's your thing?
I don't know. I walk my dog. I walk the dog here and there. I go to work. I don't know. This is my time to be a mom. I mean, I saw a salsa concert a couple weeks ago. I'm going to go see another salsa or, Colombian group with some friends next month.
So you do things.
Yeah, no, I mean, we do things. Like I'll get together with friends. I have, friends I get together with, coworkers I get together with. So I have like once a year, a group of girls that will go do a weekend away. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to figure it out because you're not striking me as, well, what I do, Scott, is massive amounts of cocaine. Like, do you know what I mean? Like you don't seem like you're an escape person. So I'm trying to I'm not really trying to figure it out for you.
I take a lot of naps during the day.
I'm a napper.
For
people listening who are maybe don't have the same, I don't know, just whatever it is built into you that lets you go childhood leukemia, diabetes, it's fine.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I think we have a staycation home, I haven't been using it as much we have a nice pool and all that. I don't know. You
just go somewhere and chill out.
Just try to chill, to relax, try to, take things one day at a time.
I know you're making it sound incredibly easy.
Know. Well, like I say, the leukemia, I mean, listen, that was tough stuff back then.
Yeah.
So I've already been through. And back then, yeah, like there were days where I'm crying, I'm holding my child in the rocking chair. He's feeling sick. He's vomiting on me. I mean, that's the trenches. That's divide and conquer. That's grandma and grandpa helping.
Mm-hmm.
My kids see me cry. What are you going to do? You know, but we're past all that now. And now I'm just so grateful.
So time does heal then.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I look back, you know, it's still painful sometimes to look back at the pictures for those years to see, you know, he's changed so much. He'd have hair, don't have hair, grow hair, you know, he'd be chubby from steroids or super skinny, back and forth. And there's some kind of weird nostalgia with all that. I don't know. Like I try to just see past the leukemia. I don't know. I'm just grateful.
Yeah. No, you're actually able to see his photos as like him growing up pictures.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's incredibly healthy. I think we should sample you and figure out.
I mean, yeah, you got to look at this. So silver linings, I think that was one of the things I put in my thing for you. Like I try to always look at the silver lining of things. Like when something bad happened, okay, so this is not where the road we wanted to take, but like, where's the positive in this, you know?
Right.
Where can I see something good out of this rather than, oh, this didn't go the way I wanted. I mean, and then just constantly my mantra is like, everything's going to work out. Everything's going to work out. Like, I guess that's my coping. It's going to be okay. Everything's going to work out.
Do you believe it when you're saying it?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I do. I mean, yeah, diabetes and all the variables is very testing, you know, like the other day we started the Mobi. We were using his leg initially with the regular AutoSoft XC things. And then I tried it on his belly. Boom, he went sky high. Turns out he had a kinked cannula. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's like right before bedtime. So then I was able to get some True Steel ones from somebody else. Let's put this one in. He didn't really like the needle part. But the good thing about the needle is it doesn't bend, right? Johnny, you know, let him see the positive. And so the next time we had to change it, he wanted to go back to the other one. So I tried it again and boom, another bent cannula. So, you know, go through the highs lead to lows things and all that.
Yeah. Do you think there'll be a day where you look back on diabetes and have the same kind of distance that you have now with leukemia?
Well, you know what? I think because, I mean, here's another thing. Like, we're so lucky he's in the sense having, because I listened to a lot of the night he was diagnosed with diabetes and we were inpatient. We went inpatient for one day to get the teaching because they were like, oh, you know, you're a nurse, we could do it outpatient. I was like, no. I am not a diabetes.
I'm sort of like, I just kind of watch Sleeping Babies. So like, hold on.
Yeah. Like admit us and treat us like I don't know anything. I didn't know what a Dexcom was. I didn't know what any of this stuff was. And I immediately went to Facebook because what got me through cancer was a Facebook group called Momcology. Mm-hmm. And I would go there and search like how many people had second transplants or whatnot, right? First transplant, relapse. I just read through stories and look in the history and I would just focus on the positive. I'm like, I'm not looking at the negative stuff. I just want to know the positive.
Yeah.
So that's how I found the Juicebox and I just started listening right away. I think just learning through that, but also like just knowing, I mean, through the podcast, I learned about all the different pumps and all the different technologies. And he came about right after Omnipod 5 came out. And now there's Mobi and there's just like stuff I feel like constantly coming out. And I don't know if AI one day is going to play a role, but I feel like as he gets older, things will get easier in a sense because technology is going to be helpful. Mm-hmm. So it'll be more manageable, you know?
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. I've also decided I'm going to call your episode 3 Little Birds.
3 Little Birds. Why is that?
It's the Bob Marley song.
Oh, 3 Little Birds. Yep.
I sang it to Arden the other night. She was having a tough time and, you know, she's a really pretty significant needle phobia. And so she had a tough time and it was over and we were in the car going to somewhere together, you know, don't worry about a thing. And she like looked at me. I was like, cause every little thing's going to be all right. You know, and she's looking at me like, oh great. This is the guy I get to like get me through it. I just told her I believe it though. Like, I really do. Like everything, like until it's over, everything else you're alive for. So, you know, a lot of it is, I mean, don't get me wrong. If you were trapped under a car after an accident, I don't know if every little thing's going to be all right. But
Yeah.
maybe that's the end for you, right? But like,
Yeah.
but up until then, these little things that happen, you don't recognize in the moment that a couple of years from now, you might not even think about this anymore. And if you could treat it more like that in the moment, it would be more manageable, I think. And it sounds like that's what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
well, now I'm looking at 3 pictures of my 3 little birds hanging on the wall here, a picture of my kids. Now I'm going to call them 3 little birds.
Oh, see?
My 3 little birds.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had another name for you. You could also call me an endomomcologist.
Do people sit at home?
I didn't know I was going to know so much about it. Now the people are like, oh, you could be a oncology nurse. And I'm like, no way. Now it's like, oh, you can be a, endocrinologist nurse. And I'm like, no, I just want to be a NICU nurse.
Yeah, it's good. Also, I would just like all this to go away, please.
Yes, exactly.
I'm with you. There's times where you're like grateful for the things that you've been able to amass in knowledge. And then there's times where you just wish, like, I wish I didn't have to think about any of this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I still think about like, what if none of this ever happened? How would our life be different?
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't
more
be,
often.
I don't think it would be that much different, but we may have done more trips international or, you know what I mean? Like different, whatever, or who knows, or different sports, or, the kids would have,
But you don't think about it like in a sad way though.
No, it's just every once in a while on tough days, things will go by, the thought, but I don't sit there and mourn or suffer over that.
Jenny, you're not a person who's you've never had depression, have you?
No, I've never had depression.
You're not an anxious person either, are you?
No, when he was diagnosed with leukemia, I did go start to see a psychologist and go cry my heart out. But it's also because I needed a doctor note to be off of work, But
well, that actually brings me to a question I've had through this whole thing. Your insurance handled all those treatments?
Yeah.
Wow. Like
Am I allowed to say my insurance? I have great insurance. Kaiser.
Kaiser? Well,
Kaiser.
You're not under a mountain of debt?
No. I think because I'm an employee and I'm like, think about it. I'm part-time. I work 0.6 employee for Kaiser. I have awesome insurance. I don't pay for anything. My out-of-pocket for each individual is like $1,500 and his family $3,000.
Okay.
And that's it.
And then Kaiser's a health system, is that right? Like a hospital system?
Yeah, a health system. Yeah, okay. Like an HMO. And then with all the transplant stuff, like they had, we did our own stuff here from Kaiser with our oncology, but then the transplant, we go to UCSF for that.
Okay.
So they pay for all that. No, that's been a blessing. We haven't had that financial stress. I was able to take time off of work. My husband could work we didn't have that extra burden some people go through with cancer, where financial or lose insurance, or once the person has to stop working. Like we didn't have that.
Okay.
So that was helpful.
Yeah. But do you think working for a hospital system helped you? Like, do they generally have better insurance, or is that not always a given?
I don't know. I don't think that's always a given.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if that was the thing that always happens.
We have a good plan, but I don't know if it's always a given.
Okay.
And right away we're with the diabetes. They're on. They support technology. Like right away, they put a Dexcom on him. That was the first thing they did when we walked in. We were admitted.
Awesome.
So that was good.
Did you hear about the podcast because you knew to search Facebook because of your leukemia experience, or did someone tell you about it? That's how you did.
No.
Okay.
Because I looked up. I think that might have been the only one I joined. Maybe I joined another one and I deleted. I don't know. Just no, because of the oncology. That was my support. When I was inpatient with him, with all the tough days, I would always go to that and read stories. I'd post things, people respond, So that's what I was looking for. And that's what I found in the Juicebox podcast. So I don't ever call my endo. I go straight to the Facebook group and I ask questions there. And then I get an answer in 5-10 minutes. So
and it works out for you.
I love it. It works out.
Tell me if I'm wrong about this. It feels to me like when somebody posts something, you get back enough from enough different people, varying answers that you can kind of cobble it together and see basically
and then
what
you
the
feel
gist is.
confident in it because it's not. It's people with experience that are living it that are giving you the advice.
Yeah, and you're able to see something that's maybe cockamamie and go, oh, that doesn't. I'll push that aside. I'll just take the part here that makes sense.
You kind of weed through stuff for sure.
Okay.
Even when people post advice or ask questions and advice, you're kind of like, yeah, that doesn't sound right, or oh, this sounds right,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, listen, it's
I don't listen. Diabetes. This experience with diabetes would have been a lot worse had it not for you.
Oh.
So thank you so much for what
Jenny.
you've done. I'm serious. It would have been a lot harder.
I can't let you do that because I am going to cry. Like, so stop. Stop. Okay.
You're making me tear up, but no, I feel like so supported with the community, and it's just at my fingertips.
Oh, I'm so happy.
So
it sounds silly to like 20-year-old me who's listening.
Yeah.
That Facebook group is like, I don't know that I could be prouder of something than that. No,
yeah, you should be proud of it. I mean, it's what I go when I click on Facebook. That's what I'm looking. I'm like, what's new? What's going on? What can I learn?
That's awesome.
Who can I help? How can I help?
Yeah, somebody asked me for some examples of what I thought the podcast did for people, and I was able to all I did was just search for a post where people were talking about the podcast, and I basically they're writing reviews and their comments. You don't kind of realize till you see it like that. And as I went through, I realized it's adults, it's caregivers, it's young, it's old, it's. There were comments in there from people who don't have diabetes. Who are like, oh, I found this group, and my thing lines up enough with diabetes that it helped me. And I was like, geez. Yeah.
Exactly. You can still learn from it. So
didn't expect that.
No,
Jenny.
what you've created is amazing.
Thank you.
It's a great legacy for you.
Oh, that's lovely.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'll have Facebook group owner put on my tombstone.
There you go. Creator. Creator, right?
Thank you. Yeah. So then, people years from now could walk by it and go, why do you think this was celebrated? And then they can wonder about it all day.
I'm sure there'll be lots of people that come by and put flowers. So,
well, that would be lovely. I wish I could be there to see that.
It's actually one of my posts that because I immediately was told the whole story about, not so much detail about him having cancer. Because I was like, is this a common thing? Who else can I find that had transplants and leukemia that had diabetes now? And you reached out, hey, if you ever want to be interviewed, and I was like, interviewed? What? I'm like, oh,
because I figured your story is so it's got to be fairly unique, and but then there's always someone else who's, oh God, it's too unique. I'm never going to find anybody with this story. So that's why I would like to, wanted to highlight yours. And I'll tell you, even the day I had the girl on who was allergic to insulin, somebody said to me, do you think this is going to be interesting to most people? And I was like, well, first of all, I find everybody's story interesting. But secondly,
for sure. Me too.
Yeah, but somebody else will care. And it wasn't 2 weeks later that a doctor from across the country reached out and said, hey, I've got a patient here. We've been struggling to help them. I heard your podcast. Tell me what they did, because I think that's what's going to help and by the way, it's helped 4 other people since then. And so
networking, community.
Really cool, actually. All right. Well,
very awesome.
Jenny, is there anything we haven't talked about that we should have?
Let me see. I had my little notes of stuff, but I don't think so. I think we covered it all.
Cool. Generally, I'm pretty good at getting through this stuff.
Yeah.
But I worry.
I was nervous for sure.
Were you?
But I get nervous about stuff like this, but I was excited too. So, and I feel like I've known you for a long time because I hear your voice all the time.
Jenny, we're friends. That's fine.
We're friends.
Yeah.
Yes.
As long as you don't show up at my house and kill me, you and I know each other, and that's fine.
I'm not going to go to jail for everything I've been through. No way.
My son is always like, one of those people is going to kill you one day, and I'm like, why? Don't say that. I'm sure that's not going to happen. He goes, okay.
I don't think so.
I told him, I'm like,
we have respect for you. Okay.
Please. You're very nice. Just a great percentage of the people I meet are just so wonderful. Really, really, just 99.9% of you guys are you're awesome. And even some of you that are weird, I even I get it. You know what I mean?
I love listening to all the different stories, all of it.
I do too. Actually, I found myself reminiscing today because this is I'm finishing up recording the 10th season of the podcast right now.
Wow.
And I looked at my schedule into 2025 and it's already full, into the first 4 months for recording. And I thought, I'm going to make this podcast forever if I can.
You could, because there's always more people. There's more stories. There's more even the technology, the pumps, there's just so many things that are constantly going to be evolving. You totally could.
And the stories
and
too.
You can have people come back, right? And tell stories. And
Well, that's the interesting thing, because people come back on and I won't remember them. So it'll be perfect because my memory is so terrible. Like, I feel like
I'm the same. Yeah.
The whole thing just is like it's like a stew almost. You know what I mean? Like at some point I'm just like, this is good. I don't even know what's in it.
Yeah.
But I know if it was missing something, it wouldn't be as good. I just, so anyway. All right. Well, I'm down. I'm calling this Three Little Birds.
All right. Three Little Birds. Thank you. You just renamed my kids. Now they're my Three Little Birds.
Well, great. If they don't like that, they're going to blame me. So
it's okay. Well, maybe they'll come kill you, right? My mom called me a bird because of you.
Can you imagine if that's the last thing I hear?
Or actually, no, maybe one year I'll dress them up as birds for Halloween.
Oh my God. I'm just imagining myself running down an alley with like a 25-year-old going, hey, thanks a lot, buddy.
Yeah.
All right. Hold on.
Thank you so much.
No, Jenny, it's my pleasure. You were terrific. Thank you. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in today, and thanks to Medtronic Diabetes for sponsoring this episode. We've been talking about Medtronic's MiniMed 780G system today, an automated insulin delivery system that helps make diabetes management easier day and night. Whether it's their meal detection technology or the Medtronic extended infusion set, it all comes together to simplify life with diabetes. Go find out more at my link, medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Cozy Earth. CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% off of the clothing, towels, sheets, off of everything they have at CozyEarth.com. I can't thank you enough for listening. Please make sure you're subscribed or following in your audio app. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. If you're living with type 1 diabetes, the After Dark collection from the Juicebox Podcast is the only place to hear the stories that no one else talks about. From drugs to depression, self-harm, trauma, addiction, and so much more. Go to juiceboxpodcast.com, up in the menu, and click on After Dark. There you'll see a full list of all of the After Dark episodes. Hey, what's up, everybody? If you've noticed that the podcast sounds better, and you're thinking like, how does that happen? What you're hearing is Rob at Wrong Way Recording doing his magic to these files. So if you want him to do his magic to you, wrongwayrecording.com. You got a podcast? You want somebody to edit it? You want Rob.